Okay, my friends, I'm back. So today I want to kind of go back and go over some basics and go deeper into some basics today. And what I want to focus on is an extremely, and in my experience, probably the most effective tool for mind hacking yourself. And the idea behind this is when you have blocks in your life that are just incredibly stubborn, that you can't seem to push past. Now, I know that I've gone through this. I bump into this occasionally, even now, as I move on through life. So I'm assuming there's probably a pretty good chance that you yourself have gone through this same scenario where it doesn't seem to matter what you say to yourself. There's just something in your life that you can't seem to push past. Maybe it's a habit. You can't stop smoking or drinking or whatever it is, or you can't seem to get your finances in order, or you can't seem to be able to get out of a toxic relationship or relationships, or you can't seem to just simply intend your life, and no matter what you tell yourself, it doesn't work. You've gone to all the seminars, you've gone to all of the the life changing seminars, like, what is the guy's name? I'm trying to think offhand. The guy with the big jaw. You know what I'm talking about. Anyways, all those self-help seminars where you psych yourself up into a frenzy, and you do a lot of deep breathing and a lot of chanting in a group, and yay, you can make it, go get 'em, tiger. And then after a couple weeks, you're right back where you were, and for some reason you just can't get past that issue. Well, that's because in order to be able to make big strides in these areas that you're blocked in, it's very important to understand how the mind works. And shamans have known this for thousands of years. And this is why you hear all these stories about shamans who can do, in times past it was important to be able to control the weather. So shamans would be able to bring rain or whatever it was, because that was what they needed. They actually needed rain to have crops, or to be able to find out where the game was. That was what shamans did thousands of years ago. But as time went on, shamans had a much more important function. In fact, even up until just before the advent of Christianity in Europe, in Scandinavia, the kings would have wizards, and if the wizards weren't capable of creating scenarios so that the king could manage his kingdom and be successful, that wizard would be put to death. So it gave you an idea that wizards were seen to have this power to be able to manifest intentions and manifest reality. And so those same techniques that those ancient shamans used, we can use today too. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to you about, again, what the mind is. And the mind is made up of three separate minds: the conscious mind, the subconscious, and the unconscious mind. And in order to be able to make any kind of headway with those really challenging, really difficult blocks in your life, it's going to take more than just positive affirmations or making a New Year's resolution, or whatever it is that we do to try and convince ourselves that we're going to change. Sometimes those things work. Sometimes all it takes is just really hyping yourself up and realizing on an emotional level what it is that you need to do, and just taking action. But sometimes it just, no matter what you do, it just seems that you can't get past whatever that issue is. And you're doing everything right, and it feels like the universe has it in for you. Well, then when we get into those situations, then we have to do a mind hack. We have to get in there and we have to reformat the hard drive. Because just like your computer that you're using to watch me now, if the hard drive, if there's fragments in the hard drive, it's going to slow things down. If there's a virus in the hard drive, that's going to slow things down as well. If the software isn't updated, you know what I mean? You could have all kinds of problems. Well, your mind is very similar. Your mind operates from software. And so, you know, trying to use things like affirmations for these really difficult problems is like trying to just simply put in a new program into a computer that needs to be defragged or that has a virus in it. You know, if you put in a new, just simply by putting in a new software program, that's not going to make the computer work any better. It's probably going to make things more difficult. And in fact, that is a lot of times what people are doing when they have these problems on a deep level in the mind, and you start trying to simply self-talk yourself into another level of living. Then what's happened is you've already got this infected hard drive, and you're just simply putting in another program, and sometimes that program is in direct opposition to what the virus is doing, and so that'll just slow you down even more. So we need to know what this mind hack is, and so I'm going to be telling you how to do that, and I'm going to be giving you specific tools that you can use and directing you to how you can do that. Some of you watching, I have already given you this mind hack, and so you might want to ask me some questions about how to use that to get over some challenging, you know, really stubborn issues in your life that don't seem to be going away. Also, what I'm going to be talking about today is we're going to be taking a look at a misconception about changing your life and about evolving. You know, there is this new age myth out there that, you know, if you just focus on love and light, or the secret, if you just focus on what it is that you want, then everything will come together, and, you know, just don't worry, it'll all be wonderful. But the reality is that if you have, like we all do, by the way, we all have this at some point, and probably multiple points throughout our existence, we will have to run into these major karmic blocks, these major blocks in our hard drive that we need to overcome. And when we face these things, the transformation that has to occur is challenging. And sometimes it is incredibly challenging. In fact, sometimes it is so challenging that it feels like it's killing us. It feels like it's destroying us. Just for example, when a shaman is called, and this is true in all cultures, when you look at how, you know, men and women of power, we could call them shamans, we can call them wizards, we can call them rishis, we can call them, you know, warriors, spiritual, you can call them whatever you want. But when they're called by the universe, there is always this life and death transformation. There's a near-death experience where they will really either die, physically die. Native Americans would push themselves to this when they did, for instance, the sun dance, when they would pierce their flesh and they'd hang from, you know, from trees, and they would push their body beyond its limit until they would pass out, and then they would leave their body and have a spiritual experience. So they would actually seek this out, and that's just one example that is found all over the world. But the idea is that when you go through this transformation, it can be a death. Literally, sometimes it is a near-death experience. Sometimes you can get sick and almost die. Sometimes you go crazy. This is one of the ways you know that somebody's a shaman, is that as a young person they're crazy and they don't fit in, and they don't function like the rest of the population. And so that's when the shaman comes in and says, I can teach this person, I can help them, and help them adjust so that they realize they're not crazy. They have an ability that most people don't have. So they see things, they experience things. Now, that isn't to say that there aren't people who are delusional. There are people who are delusional and in fact are mentally ill, and sometimes they coincide. Sometimes a mentally ill person can recover if they are able to tap into their shamanic nature. But the bottom line is, I'm getting off the subject here. Bottom line is that When you're faced with these kinds of blocks that just are stubborn and won't go away, then there has to be a life and death transformation. And lots of times this won't happen on its own. What ends up happening is that when we're in these blocks, what's really happening is that we are at odds with reality and we don't know it. And we have programming that's going on in our unconscious mind that is actually in direct contrast to what it is that we truly want and what it is that the universe wants for us. But we don't know it. And so what ends up happening is that we have the experience that the universe has it against us, is against us, and that no matter what we do, we just can't seem to make it work. So we're going to be talking about that today, and I'm going to be giving you I'm going to be talking about a tool that you can use. And I'm not only going to be giving you a general tool, I will give you an opportunity to learn how to fine-tune this tool for you, because everybody's different. And this tool will work differently with different people. And so in order to really get the most out of it, it needs to be fine-tuned just for you. And ideally, a true shaman knows how to do that. A true shaman knows how to fine-tune this defragging of your hard drive for you specifically. You know, it's like going to a doctor. A doctor will give you a prescription just for you. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do, the first thing I'm going to do is, well, I guess first thing I want to do is check and see if there's anybody online. Again, it's Friday. It's a little late, so who knows who's available. We've got 15 people watching according to my interface here. Tony Robbins, yeah, Dan, thank you. That's who I was thinking of. Yeah, you know, you go to Tony Robbins and you get all hyped up, and then you come home, and a couple weeks later, all that you know is that you've spent a lot of money to go see Tony Robbins, and you're worse off than you were before. Listen, nothing against Tony Robbins. If it works, you know, great. Sometimes you got to go deeper than that. Okay, so, all right, we've got a few people here, so great. So, for those of you online, as you know, the best way to interact with me is to ask me a question. And I look for the questions, and this is a question and answer, so you can ask me a question. So, first thing I'm going to do, we need to take a look at what are the three minds. So, you know, from a shamanic perspective, this is found in multiple traditions. In the Chinese tradition, it's called heaven, earth, and man, and it's called the three dantians. You've got heaven, which is the upper dantian. You've got earth, which is the navel, and you've got man or human being, which is the heart center. In the Hindu tradition, you have Shiva, you have Brahma, and you have Vishnu. In the Norse tradition, which is my ancestral tradition, you have, and I got a little thing here from a while back, you've got Odin, Vili, and Ve. And then, of course, in the modern psychological tradition, we have the conscious, the subconscious, and the unconscious. And even at this level, people get confused, and people very often, you know, in fact, more often than not, in my experience, including myself for many years, people will confuse the subconscious with the unconscious and don't know what the difference is. But there are three separate minds. There's the conscious mind, which is what's listening to me right now. It is my conscious mind that is communicating with you. You have this subconscious mind that is at the level, it bounces up and down between conscious and below conscious level. And then we have the unconscious mind. The unconscious mind is by far the most dominant. And so again, that is why we have these problems or these issues where you just simply can't get past something. When you can't talk yourself out of a problem, or when you can't simply make the decision to change things in your life or change your reality, this means that you have a program that is running on the unconscious level that is taking superiority over everything else. So it's overriding. So it's got an override button. So when you've got a major issue or a if you want to call it a virus or if you want to call it a program in your unconscious mind that is running constantly, and you try to put in a self-talk affirmation, like let's say you have an issue, most people do, with money. So that would mean on an unconscious level there is something having to do with money, some part of your unconscious mind has this program running that says that you will be safe if you are poor. Either you will be loved by people or you will be accepted, or being rich is bad. A lot of people have this when they have a lot of guilt about having money, being successful. That is bad. And it could just be as simple as, to get to that place that you want, you would have to transform, which would mean you'd have to let go of your identity. So your unconscious mind will have this program about keeping you at a certain financial level. And when you start to self-talk yourself, like, I'm going to be successful, or I'm going to get a new job, or I'm going to create my own business, or I'm going to make a goal that I'm going to save X amount of money, whatever it is, and you insert that self-talk, then what happens is that you've got this unconscious program that has an override button, and it goes, nope, I'm going to override that. I know you don't understand it, but that's what we're going to do. So that's why on a conscious level you can know, gosh, I need more money. But on an unconscious level, and that's why we have the word unconscious, it means you're not consciously aware of it. This is a program that is running continuously, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And not only is it continuously running, but it will destroy, it will seek out and destroy any influence, any software that wants to come in to that goes against it. It will seek it out and destroy it. And so anyway, we'll talk about that. But I want just to show you how much of the unconscious, I don't know what the percentage is something like 88% is one of the latest ones I saw. I think that's what Freud said. I don't know who said it, but let's take a look at that. And then I'm going to talk specifically about the difference between the subconscious and the unconscious. But here's what the three minds look like in this graph anyway. So the conscious mind, which is what we use most of the time in order to try and convince ourselves of, in order to change our life, the conscious mind is what we're really trying to do. And as you can see, the conscious mind is, probably 10% or less if we're lucky. Really, if we're lucky. There are some people that are so unconscious that 10% would be a real gift. But let's just say somebody has 10% conscious power. Well, that means you've got 90% of your mind working against that. So when you've got one of these programs that are sabotaging your success, and you try to bring in one of these self-affirmations, it's just like trying to sit on top of the iceberg and trying to, I don't know, lift the whole thing out of the water. I mean, it's just really, really quite impossible. And that's, I guess, something I want to say, that, listen, anything is possible, but when you're just trying to use the conscious mind to override an unconscious program, that is basically impossible. There's nothing you're going to be able to do to change that. That's why, if you haven't experienced it, I'm sure you've run into people who you can see from the outside, you can see that they are sabotaging their lives. And you're trying to tell them, why do you do that? You just sabotaged yourself. And they're like, no, I didn't. And they have no clue that they're sabotaging themselves. And they complain and they go, oh, why can't my life work? I just need to make this. I try so hard. Why is everything against me? Well, it's because it's not that life is against them, it's that their own unconscious mind is programmed against them. So we're going to talk again about the mind hack that you can use. And it's a program. It's like one of those Trojan horse programs, I guess. I'm not a hacker, but it's a backdoor Trojan horse program that will go in and burrow into your unconscious mind and begin to take apart any unconscious programming that is designed to keep you stuck or that is sabotaging you. And it's like, antibiotics. Antibiotics will go and attack bacteria. That's what they do. They go and attack bacteria, right? Again, I'm not a doctor, but that's how it works. So that's what this mind hack will do. So let's talk about the three minds. So we have the conscious mind. That's pretty clear. The conscious mind, the way I like to describe the conscious mind is that the conscious mind is your virtual reality interface. That's really all it is. So, this three-dimensional reality that we live in, it really isn't what it looks like. I mean, right now, I'm looking at things and my brain is registering things, but really all that's happening is that light is bouncing off of objects that have different levels of density and that kind of thing, and my mind is constructing that from all of the light that's hitting me, the various levels of light, and it's creating a three-dimensional reality based on that. And so that's one of my interfaces that I have that allows me to have this virtual reality interface. I won't get into it now, but it's really interesting how the eyes were, how eyes evolved. It's very interesting. I mean, the first creatures that were swimming around in pools didn't have eyes. So that's our nature is, our spiritual nature, our soul, isn't able to construct this three-dimensional reality this way. It lives in infinity. So in order for this infinity to be able to live in this limited three-dimensional space, we have to have this virtual reality interface, which is our conscious mind. Okay? Oh, look at that. Somebody's saying hello. So that's our conscious mind. Now, underneath the conscious mind, we have the subconscious mind. Now, from a practical perspective, the subconscious mind stores more information than we are capable of keeping at our fingertips at any given moment. But for instance, right now my phone, somebody's texting me, and if I think about it right now, I can remember what my phone number is. But I'm not 24 hours a day thinking about what my phone number is. It's sort of just there, right just below the level of conscious awareness, and when I need it, boom, it's right up there in my consciousness. That's the practical aspect of the subconscious. From a shamanic perspective, however, the subconscious mind acts like a what's the word I want to look for? A projector. And it projects into this three-dimensional reality. It projects your intention. Now, this is happening 24 hours a day, 7 days a week as well. You are constantly intending your reality. Most of the time, we are reinforcing the same reality. And, do this. Monitor yourself when you're out and about. Even if you're listening to yourself or talking to people, you'll find yourself reaffirming who you are. You say, I this, I that, I do this, I like that, I believe in this, or I hate that, and that's so stupid. This is you reaffirming your reality. And we need to do this because if we didn't, we would go crazy. we need to be able to understand, who we are, because without that continuity, we wouldn't be able to function. So it has a practical reality to it, but on the other side, we're constantly reaffirming some of these negative things. That's coming from the unconscious. So the unconscious mind, on a psychological perspective, again, I'm not an expert at this, but as I gather it, the unconscious mind has all of our hopes, our dreams, deeply held memories that go way beneath, way into childhood and into toddler. This is where we repress a lot of unpleasant memories, unpleasant experiences. But within it, it also has this programming. And this is the programming that is vital to our deepest identity of who we think we are. So I've talked about this a lot, but I'll give you just an example. Again, I'll use the example of money. I'll use the example in my life. You know, as when I was growing up, my father was a brilliant physicist. In fact, they're still trying to figure out, you know, some of the stuff he came up with. He was instrumental in the space race in the 60s and all that. But he was very insecure. And so what would happen is that if any of us kids, especially, you know, the two male kids, if we started to achieve something of any note, he would get uncomfortable. And we, of course, as toddlers are are total empaths, by the way. Toddlers are empaths. It matters almost nothing what you say to them. What you feel and what you project with your emotions, especially your unconscious. What your unconscious mind projects, your toddlers will pick up on that, because if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to survive. And so toddlers figure out very quickly how to interface emotionally and not to threaten their primary caregivers, because if they did, they wouldn't, you know, get thrown out of the cave, right? So toddlers learn very quickly what they need to do in order to be loved and accepted. So if the parent has unconscious issues and is insecure and all those kinds of things, toddlers pick up on that, and they learn before they're able to really speak. They learn, oh, if I'm successful, Daddy won't love me, so I will be unsuccessful. So I learned very early that in order to be accepted in my family, I had to be mediocre. So I wasn't supposed to be stupid. In fact, he liked it if I was smart, but in terms of achieving things, he didn't really. And of course, none of this was conscious. My dad never sat me down and said, I want you to be mediocre. I want you to be successful. He would say all that. But on an unconscious level, he was very uncomfortable with that because he was insecure. So I learned at a very early age that if I wanted to be accepted in my family, I had to be mediocre and I had to not be very successful financially. Now that became a real problem as I got into my 20s, because that's when you're supposed to make yourself, you know, into something. And you know, so it just, no matter what I did, it seemed I could not achieve any real financial success. Like I would get. I was an actor and a writer, and I had a theater company, and I would get all kinds of accolades, you know, from people in terms of my abilities and my reputation, but to be able to translate that into actual money, I just couldn't seem to make it happen. Now, I became aware on a conscious level that I had this, that I became aware, I won't get into it, but, you know, a lot of therapy and a lot of self-examination, I realized, yep, I had this this self-perpetuating program in my unconscious mind that if I wanted my dad's love, I had to be mediocre. And so I was unconsciously sabotaging myself at every point. And that knowledge in and of itself didn't fix the problem. This is what's important to know. What a lot of psychotherapy seems to tell clients is that, you know, if you just become conscious of your unconscious issues, you'll be able to figure it out. But it's just not the case in my experience. So that's the difference between psychology and shamanism. Shamanism understands that it's more than just this mind that's sitting, you know, on your head, but that we're talking about energetic powers, that the unconscious mind is actually infinite in its power to create. And so in order to fundamentally shift our unconscious mind, we have to have spiritual power. And so shamans over thousands of years came up with these mind hacks that they could use to hack the unconscious mind, to be able to really allow it to become its ideal self. Because here's something that's interesting to note. You don't have to reprogram yourself on a fundamental level. Just if you just take the human being without any external programs that are put into it, whether that be, you know, in this life or past life, whatever. If we take all that out, the human being and the human mind is designed for you to achieve immortality, to achieve divine infinity. It's already designed to do that. And so what shamans would do is that they would create or intuit or channel these mind hacks that they could use, which would then get rid of the bad programming and allow the inherent programming of the mind to take over. And then when that is left to do its job unhindered, then the individual not only achieves their highest success, but they achieve a very specific success that is unique to them. And that's what's important to know. You're not like everybody else. So if you're trying to be like somebody else, you're not somebody else, you're you. You have a very specific fame that you are here to create for yourself. You have a very specific success model that is connected to you. There is a gift that you have that may be similar to other people, but that is only unique to you. Like this path, this thunder path. There are some things in this thunder path, obviously, that are similar to other things, but you can't find this thunder path anywhere. There isn't anybody out there who teaches exactly what I teach. You won't find it. That's because I am following my internal core programming. So that's really what we're trying to get at. So anyway, so that's the basics about the three minds. I'm going to go ahead and do some ads here. By the way, before I forget, there is a special going on right now. It's a fall special. I have taken $90 off of the normal rate for Vedic astrological readings. Vedic astrological readings, I'm going to be explaining to you, is one of these mind hacks. And in fact, I have spent years studying and perfecting how to create very specific mind hacks from somebody's Vedic astrological chart. These are the kinds of things that I had to spend years on, and not just going to your basic Vedic astrologer, but going to the astrologers of the astrologers who will say, oh yeah, but let me show you one trick here. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. These are the things I give to the everyday people. So anyway, I won't go on and on about that right now, but there is a special going on right now. I'm taking $90 off, so it's down, and that is for limited time in the fall. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and do some ads here while I check my texts and gather myself and see if there are any questions. So I'll be back in about a minute and a half. Okay, welcome back. So, sorry, I just, isn't this rude of me? I'm checking my text while I talk to you. Okay, so I've resolved that. Okay, so, It's actually a text with some very good news for me. Anyway, all right, so I believe that there are some questions here. I'm going to go ahead and do my best to answer them. So Wilma Hopkins says, is the unconscious level the same as the shadow? Well, Wilma, I honestly can't answer that question because I would need to know the definition of the shadow, because there are so many traditions out there that would use that word, the shadow self. It could mean so many different things. So, I mean, I can't say no, that it's different from that. You could, if somebody wanted to call their unconscious mind the shadow, they could. For myself, that doesn't resonate with me. But then again, I don't know what your definition of it is, and it's really not important. The unconscious mind is, again, it's your deepest programming. I guess I could go a little bit deeper with that. You know, all the stuff I've said about it is true, but what is most important to know from a shamanic level is that the unconscious mind is the most powerful force in the universe for you. There is nothing more powerful in the universe than your own unconscious. Your own unconscious literally creates everything, not just in your world, but in the whole universe. So this is why, you know, we can't be victims. In fact, if somebody plays the victim card, all they're doing is they're preventing themselves. They're really reinforcing whatever limitations that they have. Having said that, you know, there comes a point where you realize that your unconscious is more powerful than you, quote unquote, because you is your conscious self. Your experience of yourself is your conscious self. And so the unconscious feels like it's this outside force. It feels like the universe because, and in reality it is. It is projecting your entire reality. So it is huge. It is enormous. So that's why I like the idea of the shadow. That sounds like something that's kind of nebulous, that's really just sort of like the shadow self. The unconscious is far, far more powerful than that. It's the most powerful thing there is. So to get, you know, nobody can really control the unconscious. That's why it's important to understand that what I'm trying to share with you is that what a shaman does with him or herself and with others is to try and align the individual with their core self. Because once you get rid of all the extraneous added, you know, virus programs that are in your unconscious, then you step back and you leave it alone. Then the unconscious works with the other two selves in concert. And when you have communication with the three selves, everything is possible. And then the individual, like I said, the individual will create not just whatever they want, they will be able to manifest and vibrate at a level that is unique to them. And like with this path, this thunder path, like I said, there's nobody out there that teaches this. Everybody listening to me and everybody out there, they have their own, quote, thunder path. They have their own specific life purpose that they are designed to create that nobody else can do. And so part of this journey is to be able to get rid of all this extraneous programming so that we can simply be that. And that's really what the lesson of life is. That's what all karma is. That's what all challenges are. It's really just cleaning out the unconscious. And when we are not successful, when we, for multiple reasons, are unable or choose not to do what is necessary to get to that core programming, then we reincarnate. That's the whole reason for reincarnation. We reincarnate because we are trying to clean out all of this, and especially the unconscious. And so once we've done that, then we will have achieved that, and then we will have no need to come back. So anyway, I'm going on and on and on and on and on, but there you go. So did somebody just... No. Okay, so all right, now I'm going to look again for the questions. So again, the best way to communicate with me is by questions. just putting out a statement. If I don't see a question mark, I'm going to go past it, even if it's you're saying something wonderful about me or whatever. It's nothing personal. It's just I want to make the best use of this. Okay, so let's see. Looking for the questions. Not seeing any questions here. A lot of people putting out, yeah. Twin flame question mark. I don't know. I need more than that to know how to answer that question. All right, so it looks like I guess people are talking with each other, and that's fine. Yeah, again, I'm not seeing a question. So please ask me a question. That's how I can best help you. All right, moving on. So let's talk about this life hack and all the multiple ways. Let me talk to you about, again, I'm going to be going over a lot of the basics. A lot of this you've heard me talk about. And so maybe this is another way to go on a deeper level to understand what it is that I do. Everything that I do is based on this, what I'm talking about now. Everything I teach is a life hack to be able to help you hack into your own unconscious and align yourself with your true core programming. So let's talk about that a little bit. In order for that to really take hold, you have to be willing to be your own individual self. You have to be willing to find that part of you that is unique in the entire universe. Now, this isn't an intellectual exercise. You don't have to sit there and think, how am I different? It's already there. Your unique self is already there, pre-programmed into your core essence. And however, in order to achieve that, so I've talked about, I'm talking around how to become this, your own unique individual self. But what I haven't said is that it is extremely challenging to do. And in order for the average human being to be able to align themselves that way, I can guarantee you, you will go through major personal transformation. And in fact, it may feel like a death. So when people talk about dying to the self, the true understanding of that is not the religious dying to the ego or dying to the self, like Jesus died on the cross and he gave himself for others. To me, I mean, if you hear me talk about that long enough, I'm going to tell you how incredibly self-destructive and I was going to say egotistical, but that's true. Egotistical and more than that, just downright codependent. No, you are here for one purpose, and that purpose is to be your own individual self. Your own individual self is an extremely powerful spiritual being. And this is what we call enlightenment. And this is why people who achieve enlightenment don't have to be reborn, because they've discovered themselves. It has nothing to do with being ultra spiritual or ultra good or any of that garbage. It has to do with being your authentic, truly, completely authentic self. So that's why people can spend years and years meditating, and even the things that I teach, like the Qigong. And I've seen this. I've certainly experienced it, but I've certainly seen this. People who have practiced these high-level energy practices, high-level Qigong, to the point where they're able to break all the rules of reality and do things with energy that are not humanly possible, and yet on these emotional and psychological levels, they are gripped with pain and doubt and insecurity and sadness and misery and anger and bitterness. Trust me, just because somebody's achieved a high level of spiritual power does not mean that they've achieved their enlightenment. And in fact, many times that additional power only makes them more trapped in their illusion of themselves. That is why our ancestors had fairy tales, and in the fairy tales there's no such thing as what we have now, which is you have people who are spiritual and then people who are not spiritual. No, you had people of all kinds. You had good wizards and bad wizards. You had the good witch and the wicked witch. They knew that people could achieve all kinds of powerful spiritual states and still not be good people. That's why wizards were seen as very, you had to be careful around wizards because you had no idea what kind of person this was, other than this is somebody who has power and they can intend things into their reality. But they weren't held back by any of this moral garbage that we have now with our, 10 Commandments religion that's taken over the world for the past 2,000 years. So in order to achieve this, there is a good chance you will have to go up against a lot of very painful things. You will have to potentially go up, let me say it to you this way, you will definitely have to take the risk of being rejected by people whose love and acceptance you want. I'm not saying you will have to be rejected by them. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll be able to lift them up to a new level. I don't know. But you will definitely have to go through that experience of the fear of, oh my gosh, if I really embrace who I truly am, that fear that you have, where you sense the power that you have, and you, I don't know what will happen what's going to happen to me if I let this happen? Well, one of the things that's happening is you're afraid of being rejected. I have past life memories of being martyred, of being killed for, this kind of stuff, teaching and being this exact stuff I'm doing now. I have a very clear past life memory in middle-aged medieval France, being nailed to the doorway of a church and being torn to shreds by the villagers. So I absolutely know that feeling. But the essence of that is that it's just and I remember as I was dying, I remember it wasn't the pain of being killed, it was the sadness and the anger of being rejected by all the people that I was trying to help. That's what was most painful about it. So anyway, these are the things that you're going to have to do. So I'm laying the foundation for you. I'm going to be giving you this mind hack. Many of you have already received this from me, but you need to understand the power of these things. The power of the teachings that I'm giving you are far beyond what you're going to get at your average, let's go and do some deep breathing and chant some stuff and feel good. This is real power. And, I was just talking about this with somebody, in fact, a teacher of mine, somebody who I really look up to, who has, like me, trained with a lot of, and is, training with some, I won't name drop, but some really powerful people that, worldwide known who they are, that kind of thing. And he was talking about this, that some of these people, and specifically we were talking about some services that I provide, and he was kind of saying, you're really giving it away for almost nothing. And he was naming a teacher, this guy used to charge thousands of dollars for something far less effective than what you give. And he was really successful at it, and the students that he taught were really successful themselves. And the reason for it is simply because of the value that they attach to these mind hacks he was giving to them. And that's what's important to know. And even though I'm giving out a lot of this stuff, a lot of it for free on my YouTube channel, completely for free, and my service is for almost nothing in comparison to what I'm giving you. If I were to charge $10,000, I can guarantee you this. If I were to charge somebody $10,000 for what I offer, you would probably see a lot more success with those people, because when you pay for something, you're damn well going to make use of it, no matter how challenging your life becomes, because it costs you something. So anyways, the only point I'm trying to make is that I'm about to unleash to you this hack. Some of you already have it. And what I want you to understand is how powerful it is. and the potential that it has. And that if you literally follow my directions to the T and do what I'm telling you to do, you will be able to achieve transformation beyond your wildest dreams. But you also have to be willing to go through the personal transformation that will come as a result of it. Okay? All right, so I will get to that hack in a moment, but before I do that, I'm going to see if there are any questions from anybody. All right, so right, I don't see any questions here. Okay. All right. So no questions, so I'm going to get right onto it. All right, so let me again, let's go to what we're doing here. We are reformatting the unconscious. So you may have not heard it, so I'll go over some things again very briefly. Your unconscious mind is the most powerful thing in the universe. More powerful than God, and I mean that. Or gods. I don't care who you worship. Your unconscious mind is more powerful than any of them. And you know, the Bible says that God made man in his image, and that's not true. It's the other way around. Man made God in his image, and God, Jehovah, is nothing more than the ego, by the way, just for fun. But the ego is subservient and is a product of the unconscious mind. And so the unconscious mind left to itself, when it is not programmed from any outside sources, which is what happens during, you know, between the ages of 0 to 4. That's when you get the majority of your programming. And that programming is done on an unconscious level, which means that the unconscious of the people around you, your parents, your siblings, your teachers, whoever it is that you're around most, their unconscious mind programs your unconscious mind. And depending on how strong that programming is, will result in, you know, your ability to be able to be yourself. And if you have difficulty being your true self, it means that for whatever reason, those who programmed you very strongly. So when this is, you know, why people who are born in dysfunctional homes end up becoming dysfunctional. Because a dysfunctional home is nothing more than people whose core programming has been infiltrated by these self-sabotaging viruses. So they end up being very dysfunctional in whatever their way is. They're codependent, or they're dominating, or they are critical, or whatever it is. So you end up being programmed on this very deep level on how to survive. Okay? So that is running all the time. So in order to overcome that, we have to put in a program hack that will burrow deep into that and then begin to unravel that. There are 3 main components to this. So the first component is life force energy. The one thing that is absolutely crucial is that in order to overcome these blocks, you have to have life force energy. You have to have power, because your unconscious mind is the most powerful thing in the universe. So first thing you need is power. That is done through energy. Now, on my channel, the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel, I teach all kinds of free practices, again, stuff that if I were really smart, I would charge more money for. But you can go onto my channel for free. You can go to thunderwizard.com and just look for the playlists that say Qigong or Thor's Hammer, those things. Do that every day for 40 days. That's the first thing that needs to happen, is that you need to have life force energy. Now, if you want the really high level stuff, the stuff that I was not supposed to give out, quote unquote, the stuff that had been taught for secret for years and years and years and years. In fact, I'll tell you something again. Those of you who practice the Celestial Qigong, what you need to know is that you've done it. It's incredibly simple. Now, anybody who's familiar with Qigong, especially like the Shaolin stuff or some of the Taoist stuff, you know it can get incredibly complicated. Where you sit for hours and you do certain mudras and you put the energy up here and this has a purple light in it and you breathe in the name of this God and you bring in this purple light here and then you send it down in here and you spend hours and hours doing that. Well, the deepest stuff is incredibly simple. So, no, I'm not trying to say that the complicated stuff doesn't have any value. It does. It has value because it allows the individual to absorb high levels of life force energy in ways that won't disrupt their unconscious ego. It will slowly dismantle it in a bit by bit way, which will allow the person to feel like they're sane. But if you go in there with the simplest techniques, which have the most power, and I know there are people listening who know exactly what I'm talking about because you've been practicing Celestial Qigong. When you do this and you just go for the simple stuff, it is like Drano. It just goes right in there and just starts destroying some of these things. Now, your experience is twofold. The first experience is that you feel this huge rush of energy and you get super high. And you may have a journey. You may go out of your body. Some people experience beings of light when they do this. But then the second level starts to kick in, which is then you start to feel all of your, you know, these virus programs start to come apart. Now, your ego, your identity, and again, remember, your identity is what do I need to do to be accepted in life? That's everything is about. I don't care what anybody says. Everything in life is about wanting to be loved and accepted. It sounds really trite, but it is the deepest, it's the most powerful drive that we have. Even if that means that you sit on a mountaintop and you have this ideal of yourself as being, I am one with the universe. To you, that means that's what you are supposed to be, and that makes me spiritual. And even if it's just the idea that people love and accept you. Or if your ideal of being accepted is that I'm a rebel, I'm different from everybody, that's why I worship the devil, because I'm a blah, blah, blah. That still has an underlying wanting to be. You have an idea that that's what a good, successful person is that they're a rebel and everybody hates them. It's all coming from the same place. You see that? When you get the high level energy, whatever your little cocoon is about your identity, it gets blown apart and you feel like you're dying. So, that is why it's important to understand what this stuff is doing and how powerful it is. When I was practicing the spirit fighting, which I do not teach on video, I only teach that privately, but the Celestial Qigong is based off of that. When I teach the spirit fighting, there's an over 90% chance that the student will not be able to handle it. And they end up leaving because they can't take it. They can't take the life hack. It's too much. But in order to have the power, you have to reduce the RAM that it takes to keep the ego together is significant. It's a huge amount of RAM that's going on in your unconscious mind. So all of that RAM that goes to I am this, I am that, I believe this, I don't like this, I blah, 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 blah. All of that energy is energy that could be going into achieving higher states of energetic being. That's why, as a result of me doing all that stuff years ago, I was able to do all kinds of crazy things. But I wasn't, if you were to experience me, you would be like, what? You wouldn't be able to get a handle on who I was. Because especially if I was really deep into it, I would look like a zombie. And people would be like, I can't feel you. And it's scary. When you're in front of a being, I imagine that's what aliens are like. When you're in front of a being where you can't feel them and you don't know where they're coming from, it messes with your reality. But the idea is that when the ego gets destroyed to that level, then you have all of this RAM that's available to you, and now you can make use of all kinds of life force energy to do all kinds of stuff. So that is a long way of me telling you that the first thing that you need is you need life force energy. Without power, you're not going to be able to overcome the unconscious programming that has created whatever false identity you have that's limiting you, and we all have it. So that's step one. I'll get to step two and step three after I'm going to take a break here, do some ads, and then I'll come back and take a look and see if there are any questions. Okay, so we're about to get to step two. Let's see. All right, again, so I'm looking for questions here. I don't see any questions. All right, so let's see. I thought I saw a question in here. Lamprey says, to find your passion, find what makes you happiest and then do it. It is harder than it sounds, but that's life, right? Yeah, that is right. Finding your passion, again, it's not a superficial thing. It's something that's pre-wired into you. And so I'm trying to really bring home how powerful all of this stuff is. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That is life. All right, so let's see. I think I saw one other question here. Daggerus says, so does your astrology play a part in your unconscious issues also, to go along with everything else and adds up to those issues too, doesn't it? Yes, absolutely. Anybody who knows me knows that I do not teach anything that I haven't found in my life to be absolutely essential and downright practical. So again, let's talk about Vedic astrology. Again, my experience is that Western astrology, for me, has not been very accurate and very helpful. In the places where Western astrology does sort of shine a light on something that hits me, I've found that when I've analyzed it, like if I take somebody's birth date and I look at a Western chart and then I look at a Vedic chart, I'll see that the Western chart is sort of right. It's a little bit off, and it's sort of looking in the right direction, and so it kind of makes sense what somebody says. But then when I look at a Vedic chart, I can see, oh, that's why it's for this. So they have the right idea, but for the wrong reason. So Vedic astrology, again, in my experience, is extremely accurate. If you've never done it, I highly recommend it. Let me just tell you this: when you pick up, your paper and you look at your sun sign in Western astrology, that is not who you are. That's not your personality. Your personality is not your sun sign. Your sun sign, when you're born, your sun stays in the same sign for 30 days. Vedics use a three-prong approach to find out who you are. It is your ascendant. which changes every 15 minutes. That is how you were screwed into place. That's how you see life, and that's how your karma unfolds. Extremely important. When you're not operating from that, if you're trying to look at your sun sign to figure that out, you're not going to get a lot of things right, because you're not looking at how your karma unfolds from your perspective. That's what your ascendant is. Second most important is your moon sign. Your moon is your mind. Your moon, now the ascendant changes every 15 minutes. The moon also changes very quickly. I don't remember the exact time frame, but it moves very quickly. Your mind is your interface. It's not your intellect, by the way. It's your mind and your emotions. The mind is also your emotions. Your emotions are all over the place all the time. They never stay in one spot. So you need to know where somebody's moon is. And you need to know the exact nakshatra, the exact sorry, I get so wound up I can't talk because there's so many ideas coming into my head. You need to know the exact star constellation where your mind is in order to know how your mind thinks. And then you have to look at your D9 chart to see where your mind, how your mind is going to change as you get older. It means where you're going to be as you get older, where your focus is going to be. And then the third most important thing is the sun sign. The sun sign is your ego. It is your identity. So your identity is not the same as your personality. It's not the same as your mind and your emotions. When you look at all three of those, then you can see what a person is. So that's why, you know, the sun sign is itself, you know, it can sometimes be so wrong. Like my sun sign is Virgo. And as you can tell, my personality is not very Virgo. I mean, there are some things about my personality which is Virgo. I'm highly intellectual. I tend to be a very private person. But you can see as I'm expressing myself, I'm definitely a Leo. I'm the performer. I'm the king. I'm out there. I roar. I stand. I roar. That's me. That's my personality. So I always had that. It was like, you know, when people would tell me I'm a Virgo, I'm like, I just don't see that. I'm messy as hell, for one thing. Virgos are supposed to be really neat and tidy. Now, if you look at a Vedic chart, then it all makes sense. Yes, his sun sign is Virgo, so of course he's a very private person, but externally he is definitely not fastidious or anal retentive or, you know, all that kind of stuff. So the other thing about that, now we're going to get to number 2. So you asked the question about astrology, so you gave me an opportunity to go off. By the way, again, we have a special right now for fall Vedic astrology. I'm taking $90 off for the fall. So it's a limited time. And again, people come to me and they say, you know, are you going to have a special? And they're going to wait for a special. The longer you wait, I'm just telling you now, the prices are going to go up. The more successful I get, the more I'm going to charge, because my time is the most important thing. So when things are slow, like they are now, you know, my special now is more than it was 6 months ago. 6 months ago, my special price was lower. So don't wait. It's well worth it. I'm telling you. I'm just telling you, it's worth your effort. And the truth of the matter is, the more you pay for my services, the more you're going to get out of it, because it'll mean more to you. You'll be more likely to put it into practice. So those of you who think you wish you could get a free reading, you're doing yourself a disservice. Anyway, so moving on. The second most important thing. So the first most important thing, again, is life force energy. Without life force energy, which is energy work, Qigong, celestial Qigong. By the way, if you want that, go to qigong.thunderwizard.com, qigong.thunderwizard.com, or go on to Amazon and you can get this DVD if you don't want the live streaming. And that will give you power. But again, if you don't want to do that, I give it away for free on my YouTube channel. Just go to the Qigong playlists, pick one, and do it every single day. Okay, that's the first one. Second one. First one is life force energy. Second one is Kundalini. So now as it's starting to come together, if you've been watching me recently, I just did a whole thing on the difference between life force energy and Kundalini and what they both do. So now you're starting to be able to put the pieces together, why I'm giving you all these pieces. And eventually I'm going to give you a life hack, a mind hack that uses all three of them. When you put all three of them together, then there's literally nothing in the universe except you that can prevent you from achieving infinity. So the first one is life force energy. The second one is Kundalini. What is Kundalini? First and foremost, we have to understand that. Kundalini is, there's so much misunderstanding about Kundalini. Kundalini in and of itself will not bring you enlightenment. People think if they awaken their Kundalini that they'll achieve enlightenment. That's only partially true. The Kundalini is not life force energy. The Kundalini is emotional, psychological energy. So it is a spiritual energy, but it is an earthly energy. So your Kundalini will not leave this earth. Your Kundalini is all about being a human being. But it is a spiritual energy. And on the negative side, people who have negative Kundalini experiences, what's happening is that this ego energy, this not just I'm not talking about the psychological ego, but I'm talking about the energy within the spinal column that resonates on spiritual identity, who I am. This is who I am spiritually. When that energy begins to rise up the spinal column, then it has a direct connection to the nerves. So the nervous system has a direct connection to Kundalini. That's why people who have negative Kundalini experiences, not only do they go through delusions, they'll have visions, they'll have nightmares, they think they're God, they think they're the devil, they think they're being attacked, they think they've achieved enlightenment, but they'll also have fiery fingers and the heat and headaches, and this means that there is an imbalance of the spiritual ego. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, because when you're having that, it means that your body and your spirit is trying to balance itself. So if somebody has had that experience, just know that, you know, what you really need to do is to have some shamanic counseling. You need to sit down with somebody who can help you achieve balance on a personality level, on an ego level, and that will help you balance that energy. Kundalini, as it rises through the spine, it opens up the chakras. The chakras are not life force energy points, they are Kundalini points. So there are 3 life force energy centers, as you know, and these are places where life force energy is stored and purified and empowered and sent and all that kind of stuff. The 7 chakras overlay those, and this is where we have real emotional, psychological, ego identity evolution experiences. Root chakra is about security. The sacral chakra is about expression on a lower level. You know, that's why teenagers are so into like music, but the music that they listen to, you know, if you really analyze it, it sounds like nursery rhymes, but maybe there's something to it that makes it sound a little cool, right? So it's self-expression and it's sexual self-expression, but it's on a lower level. The third level is on the ego, in the sense of the navel center of my stuff, who I am, and conquering the world. And then you get to the heart center, and the heart center is about community, and that's when people get really religious. That's the ego is trying to figure out how it connects to the infinite and to others on a spiritual level. You get to the throat, and then they get the higher level of identity that is no longer about dancing with a bunch of people at a nightclub trying to connect with a group and express my individual dance moves on the floor, but it's about expressing your individuality alone with the universe, you and God, the prophet on the mountain. And then you have the third eye, which allows you to be able to go beyond your limited identity and see, quote unquote, see into the other realms of existence. And then you get the crown chakra, where the Kundalini dies and you achieve samadhi, which means you have union with everything. And then the energy goes all the way back down again. That's what people don't tell you, is that the Kundalini rises to the top. Then it has to go all the way back down. And then you have to have lessons on a practical level going all the way back down, learning how to practically apply all this ego stuff. And then you're considered to be a human being. So that's Kundalini. Now, Kundalini is absolutely essential when it comes to this life hack. To be able to go into the unconscious mind and defrag the hard drive, to get rid of all of those, if you haven't watched, go back and listen to me talk about, as a toddler, how I was programmed and how what I have been continuing to do to overcome that. The Kundalini is the force that goes in there like a program and starts to destroy those viruses, those computer viruses in your unconscious that are constantly giving you bad information. Remember, the unconscious means you are not aware of it. You are not consciously aware of it. So we all have unconscious issues. So, just to give you an example, let's say somebody, how can I say this in a let me find something that is politically correct here. Let's say somebody, well, I'll talk about me. I'll talk about me again. So, as you know, if you've heard me talk about Vedic astrological readings, I would say the most important thing in a Vedic astrological reading is to learn what your projection is. Now, your projection is not your personality. Your personality is your ascendant. But your ascendant is how you experience life. For me, I have moon in Leo. Now, I also have a debilitated moon, which means that I'm very sensitive. Leo is the ego, is the king. Your first house is your personality and your physical body. So that means I experience myself as this very vulnerable, emotional person. As a little kid, I was so insecure. Like when I first went to kindergarten, I didn't talk the whole first day. Can you imagine me not talking? That's not like me. So that's my moon. That's how I experience myself. Very emotional, very vulnerable, all that kind of stuff. My projection is the spiritual warrior. My projection is Mars in the third house. Third house is hands. Mars is the warrior. So I'm a fighter. That means I literally have the power to physically fight with my hands. It makes me a very powerful martial artist. But it is in Libra. Libra is the Venus sign of equanimity, of balance. You put those two together, my projection is the shamanic warrior. I'm the peaceful warrior who brings balance, protection through balance. That's how the world sees me. Now, I spent years trying to promote this sensitive side because I had an older brother who used to beat the crap out of me, so I hated bullies. So I didn't want to intimidate anybody. So I would walk around not trying to do that, and the end result is I looked like this dark killer. When I think I'm trying to be humble, I end up looking like this everywhere I go. And I end up looking like this serial killer. So that's the thing about your projection, is if you don't embrace your projection, then the negative side of your projection will come out and people won't like you for whatever reasons. People would get out of my way as I walked down the street, and it hurt me so badly. It was so hurtful to me. Makes me tear up just thinking about it. But once a Vedic astrologer told me that my Aruda, that my projection was the spiritual warrior, this is what you see before you. Shaved head, I lift weights, I dress in sleeveless spiritual Ganesha shirts, I wear all of these things. That's how people want to see me. And when I dress like that and when I present myself that way, I am a success. Now, that is one very powerful Kundalini hack into my unconscious. I already shared with you the struggle. So you can see, this stuff isn't just like, oh, wear this color or do that. We are talking about hacks that go in there and get rid of the programs in your unconscious that are trying to sabotage your success. And when you get the hacks that you really need, they are going to be challenging. Your ego is going to have to go through a transformation. Now, the most powerful tool to go in there and get a Trojan horse program, to go in there and destroy the viruses in your unconscious, is mantra. Mantra will empower the Kundalini. So what is mantra? What's the difference between chanting a mantra and chanting a self-affirmation? Self-affirmation is, I'm getting more successful every day. I am a millionaire. I am a millionaire. I have 2 cars and a big house. I have a model wife. Those are self-affirmations. Now, is that going to work? No. A bunch of different reasons. One of them is because of this book here. If you go and read this book, The Shamanic Secret Commandment to a Perfect Life. If you read that book, you will find out that the secret doesn't work because it's not about what you focus on. It's about if you focus on what it is you truly want. When you focus on what you truly want, then the universe has to manifest it. It has to. And so mantra, as opposed to some self-affirmation, which is just on the conscious level, you're just trying to force in some software into your unconscious, and your unconscious is just going to reject it every time. If it goes against your unconscious virus, if your unconscious virus is, like for me, what I thought was that I had to be mediocre in order to be accepted by my father. If that is the unconscious programming, all of the conscious affirmations of I'm going to be rich, I'm going to have a house, and I'm going to, that the unconscious mind just destroys that every time it comes in there. So what mantra does is mantra goes in like a backdoor Trojan horse program. Again, I don't know I don't know what the kids are doing these days to hack computers, but that's what I know from watching movies. It's a Trojan horse that goes in there and starts to dismantle the virus. And then what ends up happening as that virus becomes dismantled, your ego attachment, the thing that you created in order to protect yourself, starts to come apart. And you start to have challenges. And this is why it's so important to have the right mantra. Now, when I make mistakes, I will share them with you. Now, the rule is, when it comes to mantra, that if you don't know any better, the universe gives you a pass, which means that you can be given a mantra that is not really wired for you. And if you don't know any better and that's all that you have, and you chant it, the universe will give you a pass. And we'll say, okay, we'll work with them and we'll give them some benefit. You may have an experience of, it didn't quite give me everything I wanted, but it helped. But when you know the science of mantra, then you are bound by that science. Because I'm a Vedic astrologer and I know at least some of the science behind mantra, I have to follow the rules. And I didn't, just recently I didn't. And it's because one of my previous astrologers gave me a mantra, but now that I've done it, I know that that mantra actually does not vibrate with my ascendant. And so to do it now knowing that it's a wrong mantra, the universe doesn't give me the free pass. And I ended up tearing my quad as a result of that. Now it's not major. It'll probably be weeks before I'm back to 100%, but I'm able to walk around. It's what they call a strain, but a strain is actually a tear. But it's a direct result of doing the wrong mantra, and I knew it. Now, we could get into all the karma behind it, and there was a blah, 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 blah. But that's how specific mantra is for you. Now, not only is the mantra aligned with your ascendant, but it is also going to be aligned with specific planets. It's also going to then be aligned, there will be a seed sound that will go before the name of the planet or the name of the deity. And there has to be a specific, syllable for that. Once you get that and put that together, that will align you to your moon. So when you have your ascendant and your moon vibrating in ways that resonate, then you have this, the sum, the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. Then you have this Trojan horse that will go in and completely dismantle all of the negative self-talk. And I've experienced it, and I know that when I've given it to people, sometimes people will come back, like sometimes within seconds of chanting it, they go, oh my God, my whole body, and they feel things in their body happening, like, I just felt all this. They'll feel joy, they'll feel heat, they'll feel love, they'll feel something will hit them, and they'll feel like they've plugged into some, that one little, outlet that's fit just for them. Now, what's important about mantra, as I said, when you get the right one, the Kundalini then goes in and starts to dismantle that virus. What will then happen is that your unconscious issues will come to the surface, which means that your unconscious mind will fight. It will fight to keep that unconscious sabotaging program in there because, remember, you input that, or it was input into you by your parents at a toddler age, because as a toddler your entire focus was, how do I get the love of my parents so that I'll be physically taken care of? And then as we get older, it gets deeper and deeper lodged in the unconscious, and we are completely unaware that our entire lives are based on some, what should have been a temporary program just to get us through being a child. Because ideally, once you're out of your parents' house, you should be able to be yourself. By the way, that's why there are rituals for manhood. That's why there are rituals for adulthood. That's why even in some cultures, there's a really, like in I think I don't know if it's in all Hispanic cultures, but in the Mexican culture they have, when the girl turns 15, which again is puberty, right? Puberty, hundreds and hundreds of years ago, at 15, they were looking for a husband at that age. So what was happening is that they gave them a ritual which would dislodge them from whatever their unconscious programming was, which got them through childhood. Because now they have to reprogram themselves to fit better with their husband, right? You see, this is how important ritual is. So that's number 3, by the way. Number 3 is ritual. This is why our ancestors did ritual. Now, we still have rituals today. I just mentioned one that's still in some. We have things like New Year's Eve, we have Christmas, we have 4th of July. These are rituals that keep us together on the society level. But what happens when you have these personal blocks that can't be fixed by, your 15-year-old birthday or Christmas or New Year's or 4th of July? What happens when you have a block in your own life and you can't get past it? You need life force energy. You need a mantra that is tuned specifically to you. And when you find somebody like me who knows the science of that, they can tune one specifically for you. Then you have a ritual, and you do a ritual, and the ritual is like the final piece that comes together. When you have all 3 of these components together, and when they are created specifically for your vibrations, this is something the unconscious mind has no protection against. And that's why it's so challenging, and that's why so few people can pull it off. Because when you give somebody one of these things, and again, this is why it should never be done for free. I don't care if you give somebody a rubber band or a feather, you have to give, there has to be an exchange. This is why, people come to me with this all the time. Well, shamans don't. Well, I say, well, you give them tobacco, right? Well, yeah. That is the exchange. You have to give something. You have to do it. It has nothing to do with them. It is your unconscious mind, because your unconscious mind will not value anything if there is not an exchange. You have to understand the mechanics of the unconscious mind. This is why you only see this in modern Western culture. In modern Western culture, you have people who are, I forget the word, who run around, hating money and hating people that ask for money, or teachers that ask for money. They hate that, and all spiritual teaching should be for free. And then they go out and teach for free, and they're poor as hell. Because when you do not demand some kind of sacrifice from the client, from the student, even if it's just tobacco or a feather or something, then you are missing that final ingredient which allows their unconscious mind to kick in and go into overdrive. Now, I gave you the example of, my teacher who was saying, this other guy, he would charge people $10,000 for one little, and he didn't even have the knowledge that I have. He was just giving random mantras out to people, and he'd charge them $10,000. But there would be massive changes in these people's lives. Because you better believe if you spend $10,000, no matter what personal hell you go through, you are going to finish that. If he says to do it for a year, you're going to finish that year out because you paid $10,000 for that damn thing, and you are going to get your money's worth. And people completely shift and change. That's because the unconscious mind responds to symbolism. And that is why ritual is so important. So, when people come to me, and if somebody comes to me for the entire package, that's assuming that they are doing energy work, whether it's from my channel or from Celestial Qigong. And they get a mantra from me because I've taken a look at their chart and I've been able to find out exactly what the ingredients are for them. And then when they paid me for it, and I give them a time period, and I say you have to do it for X amount of days. On top of that, I give them exactly what elements they need, because in your chart you will be able to see what element each planet needs. For instance, if I want to worship the moon, I've shared about this already when I gave you the moon mantra in the last video. When I want to worship the moon, my moon is in Leo. So that means that the moon needs fire for me. Now, if you have moon in Cancer, then that would mean your moon would need something like milk or mead or some kind of libation, because that is, the moon is water. If it was in Mercury, it would need, a Mercury sign, it would need incense, because that is the element of air, of incense. So you see what I mean? When you have all of these things put together, and you put them together and you have sacrificed for it and you commit to it, regardless of how difficult it is, your unconscious mind cannot survive that onslaught. And then it has to change. And then what will happen is you will become a different person. You will evolve, and then you will be able to be that individual who, that's what all of these, kinds of representations look like. These pictures that I put up here, that's what represents. When you're seeing these pictures, what you're seeing is somebody who has gotten, whether they realize it or not, has gotten all three of these ingredients together. They have life force energy, they have Kundalini energy, and they have the symbolism of ritual, whatever that is for them, and that has all come together, and then you end up with this. Then you have somebody who is completely hooked up on every single level. And there is no reason that everybody listening to me can't achieve that. And, it doesn't mean that, there isn't more work for you to do, but when that hits and you get all of those things aligned at one time and all of those ingredients come together and you have that experience where you are fully connected to yourself and to the universe, to infinity. There's no words to be able to describe it. Now you will have to go through the reconstruction. That's what New Age won't tell you, because it's trying to do the superficial whatever it's trying to do. Once you see after this picture right? After this picture, then the individual is going to have to then deal with that, the after effects. And so that is why people in the past used to go up onto mountaintops, or that is why they would go to ashrams. You know, that is why people go through vows of poverty. That's why people put themselves through so much. Like I said earlier about this, the sun, you know, the sun dance, the Native American sun dance, where they pierce their flesh and pull on it, and they put themselves through such hell. Because then whatever ego reconstruction they have to go through is nothing compared to what they physically had to go through. Again, that's sacrifice. This is one of the things we miss. The sacrifice is not there in our modern culture. We don't understand the main thing. Like, you know, people understand about life force energy to some degree. People understand about Kundalini and mantra to some degree. People do not understand ritual to the degree, you know, most people do not understand what ritual really does to the unconscious. And what they really don't understand is sacrifice. And how the personal sacrifice, when you combine it with all these things, that is the magic final ingredient that brings it all together and creates this nuclear bomb of power for transformation. Okay, so going to go do some ads real quick. I'll come back and see if there are any questions, and I'll do what I can to answer them if possible. So I'll be back in about a minute and a half. Okay, so I did see a couple of questions in there. Some of them look pretty good. All right, so Daggerus says, oh, I already answered that one. Lamprey, does it really give like a chemical high? Sounds interesting. Yes, because it is a chemical high. All of these things, you know, what my teacher used to say, my spirit fighting teacher used to say is, that when you do these certain movements and breaths, that what he would call it sets off switches within your body. But I can tell you that DMT, listen, when people are trying to get high, you know, DMT is the big thing now, right? Whether they're doing ayahuasca or whether they're doing any other kind of plant teacher, or when they're just doing a chemical, whether it's LSD or crank or speed or whatever it is, they're all doing it for the same reason. They are manipulating their chemistry, and they are telling the brain to release all kinds of chemicals into the bloodstream. That's what gets you high. So energy work does that. High level Qigong does that. And yeah, it is, and I've done it all. And I can tell you without batting an eye that high-level energy work is far more of a high, a much greater, bigger huger, deeper high than anything that I've ever done. In fact, after, I won't get into it, but I had to take a chemical for some other reason, and having in my mind not done it for decades, once it got into my bloodstream, it was so much different than I remembered, and it was so much worse. And that's because for decades I had been getting the primo stuff, which was life force energy. True Qigong energy will get you so high without any of the downside. Now, here's the difference, and this is important. This is why people are more inclined to do chemicals or plant teachers, because, and this is going to push some buttons, but plant teachers have to be done under the guidance of a shaman. You can't just go get it and do it and create. If you do that, all that's happening is, again, you're just flooding your system with chemicals that are squeezing your pineal and your pituitary gland and forcing all this stuff. And you have an experience, and you might have a really transformative experience. But what ends up happening as well is that you also release your unconscious fantasies. So they don't dismantle your unconscious in the same way. And that's why you can't tell the difference when sometimes you're high, if you're having a bad trip or a good trip, or if you're just experiencing your own unconscious narcissism. When you do life force energy, you are getting the real thing. And what ends up happening is that you go through this destruction of the ego, and it's painful. But you're going to see reality for what it truly is. And you're going to experience reality no matter how high you get, or no matter, and we're talking trips like leaving the body, going to other realms of existence, seeing other beings. What's going to happen is it's going to be real. And you won't have to ask, is this just my unconscious fantasies? As you do. And anybody who knows, if they do plant teachers or drugs or chemicals, the more you do it, the more diluted people become. That's just a fact. And the more addicted you become, and the more physically out of balance you become. Whereas the opposite happens when you do life force energy. When you do Qigong, the opposite happens. You release the DMT. You actually train the pineal and the pituitary to build up like a muscle, and it starts to secrete more and more and more and more as you do it. But it takes discipline, and it takes commitment. And part of the discipline is not just doing it on a regular basis like you do when you're exercising, but the discipline of, even though you're going through that personal transformation and how painful that is, you're going to show up every day and do your work. And people, I know there are people listening who know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like, gosh, do I really want to go through that? But the pleasure of the energy is so great. And anyway, I could go on and on. So yeah, it is absolutely, it's better than any chemical high I've ever had. All right, so Emerson's Coffee, Bike, and Rum Shop says, Sifu, how can someone obtain a DMT high experience using Qigong? Well, I just explained it. Qigong does. People ask, there's, I forget, anyway, there was some meditative practice I was learning, and one of the things you're looking for is you're looking for the drop of nectar, and you can taste it on your tongue. That's DMT. You've done everything right so that the pineal releases it, and then you're supposed to do something. Now, you don't have to worry about that. That's just one particular practice. The stuff I teach, you never have to worry about. Just do what I tell you to do, and just follow my instructions to the letter, and I can guarantee you your brain will be producing and releasing DMT. And the longer you do it, the greater the effect will be. Okay. How can someone dial it down for sleep and relaxation like weed and alcohol does? Well, weed and alcohol, what it does is suppresses. So it's again, if what you're, let's just say, for example, somebody's going through this and they're going through emotional issues. Well, unfortunately, the emotional issues are there, and you may have difficulty sleeping. That's just part of that. Again, that's why people used to set themselves up on mountaintops and in ashrams, because then if they had to, they would stay up all night and meditate and deal with the emotions. But the best thing that I can suggest is to do the Hool breath. The Hool breath is a very grounding, very calming meditation. If you're new to my channel, go onto my channel, HUUL breath. If you want to start off with the Qigong, do that. That will do everything we've just been talking about. So that's my best suggestion. Otherwise, I can tell you, having been there myself, that sometimes you just need to have a sleepless night. It'll change. You have to work through it. You have to maybe journal. Journal what's going on, what you're feeling, get it out, and then trust me, you'll fall asleep like a rock. Okay, so let's see, anything more here? All right, looking for the questions. Looking for the questions. Dan Benavides says, can you summarize number 3, ritual, once again? Well, ritual is anything that contains symbolism. So sitting around Christmas morning, passing around the presents that have come from underneath the Christmas tree and opening up the presents, that's a ritual. Because the symbolism of the Christmas tree, by the way, is ancient. It's has nothing to do with the birth of Jesus. It has to do, shamanically speaking, with the spinal column and the nervous system and the 9 worlds. But that's what it was. It was a symbol of the tree of life, and the presents underneath it were symbolic of, we're going into now, we're headed towards spring, and spring is going to bring crops. So it was representative of the earth. It was symbolic of the earth giving gifts. That's why we gave gifts to people. It binds us together, does all kinds of other things. That's a ritual. Anything that has any kind of symbolism attached to it is a ritual. Now, specifically, the ritual I'm talking about is, every person listening to me has been wired with very specific vibration and with very specific ritual needs for specific things. Like I said, if I want to work with the moon, and again, for me, my moon is my dharma, which means if I want to get aligned with my path, I need to worship the moon, which means I need to connect with my mind and my emotions. I could get into that. That's why I wear this, by the way. It's a moonstone. It's why I wear it, because it aligns me. So this is a ritual in itself. Wearing this, whenever I wear it, that's a ritual. But when I want to do this, the step number 3 that I talked about, I already explained that. I need to worship facing the east, and I need to chant a moon mantra. So I need to chant to a deity that's connected to the moon, and I need to have a fire, a candle or a fire, because it's in Leo. So that's the exact number 3 ritual. The number 3 ritual is knowing which mantra, which planet that you are trying to connect with, because are you trying to connect spiritually? Are you trying to connect to your path, which is your dharma, or are you trying to connect in terms of getting physical resources? Depending on which planet vibrates on that, your chart will tell you what direction you need to face and what element you need in order to fire that up. It's like that's the combination that gets that planet working in your life to do what you want. And then, of course, if I were to add a number 4 would be an intention. So what what your specific intention is, you put all 3 together. So again, all 3 is number 1, you have to have life force energy, because energy work, qigong, some kind of energy work, because without power, you won't be able to overcome your unconscious mind. Your unconscious mind is the most powerful thing in the universe. Number 2 is you have to get the Kundalini involved, which is the spiritual identity within the spinal column, and that is what mantra is. Mantra will take the power of Kundalini and send it into the unconscious mind and break up all of the unconscious sabotage that you are incapable on a conscious level of overcoming. Number 3 is you have to have ritual, which means you have to know what symbols and what procedures that particular planet and energy needs for you, because it's not going to be the same for me, for you, in order to then drop in your intention. Boom. Once you drop in your intention, they all come together, and then the universe is helpless against it. You know, whenever they say be careful what you ask for, when you do all this stuff the right way, the universe is helpless against your intention. It has to manifest it. By the way, while I'm on the subject, when we're just talking about ritual, the most powerful ritual that I can give you, besides the thing I put together, is the spell of the 9 knots. But the spell of the 9 knots is a one-time thing. I mean, you can do the spell of the 9 knots multiple times throughout your life, but it's a one-time thing where you come in and just do that ritual. It's a very elaborate ritual, and that is a one-time thing. What I'm talking about here is the 3-step or the 4-step mind hack to overcome really stubborn, unconscious sabotage that you just cannot think yourself out of. That's what I'm trying to teach you here today. So, all right, so we're probably going to wind down here. I'll do some ads. I'll answer if there's any more questions, and if not, we'll go ahead and wind down. So I'll be back in about a minute 20. Okay, so I do believe there was at least one question there. 2 questions. Daggerus says, so is Kundalini practice variation dependent on your astrology too? Well, listen, there's all kinds of Kundalini practice. You know, I used to teach what's called Kundalini yoga. And Kundalini yoga was actually a bunch of different things. It was Hatha yoga, it was pranayama, it was mantra yoga, it was specific things that did stimulate the Kundalini. So there's a lot of things that will connect to Kundalini, but really mantra is the most effective way, in my experience, of really getting Kundalini to work in the way you want it to, as opposed to just getting it stimulated randomly. So yes, the answer is yes. Mantra is very dependent upon your astrology. I don't know if you heard me say it, but I'll repeat myself. The rule is that mantra is a science. Mantras are not self-affirmations. You know, when you translate a mantra, there might be a self-affirmation in there if you translate it, but that's not what's happening here. The mantra is an equation of syllables, which when strung together in a specific equation literally creates like a Kundalini virus program that goes into your unconscious. Now, the rule is, when you know the science, you have to follow the rules. So that's why, like I said, I broke the rules. I did a mantra because, you know, it was the right time of year to do it, and one of my teachers long ago gave it to me, and so I thought, well, it's okay, one of my teachers gave it to me, even though he didn't know the science like I do. And I broke the rule and I end up literally hurting my physical body. So what's happening is that it's not aligned to you. So your astrology, when I look at somebody's chart, I can tell. Like for instance, I can look at somebody's chart and know what I can create a specific mantra and ritual for them for their spiritual enlightenment. I can take a look and see an exact, or get maybe 1 or 2 different mantras created specifically for their path, to help them follow their path in this life. I can find and create a mantra that will vibrate specifically for them on a level in terms of getting money and finances and cars and stuff like that. There is a science to it. So yes, it is absolutely dependent upon your astrology, and that's why I do this service. Because I spent years doing mantras and doing rituals, and sometimes they'd work and sometimes they didn't, and you know, it was like I could tell that I just wasn't getting the thing that was right for me, and I was still stuck in the same things that weren't changing. And I finally got so frustrated because I could tell even these, you know, master astrologers, because astrology is huge and these guys are masters of all this knowledge, I could still tell they were just sort of off the mark on some things. And so I knew what I wanted to learn, which is exactly what I give in a reading. And this is it. I wanted to find the science of mantra, the science of ritual, so that I could change these patterns within myself. But again, the downside, I said, now that I know that what the science is, I have to follow the rules, or otherwise, you know, it could be big problems. So the upside is that if you really want something that works, you got to find somebody like me who knows what they're doing. So that answers your question. D. Tota Monet, yes, this will be archived. Once I'm done live streaming it, it will be archived. It will probably take, you know, maybe an hour or so before it's available for everybody to go and watch it all the way through from the beginning, so you can. Susie Yoten's wife asks, any suggestions for people who for medical reasons have to consume psychoactives such as opiates, medical marijuana, benzos, etc.? Okay, so let me talk about that. First off, if that is the situation, you got to be careful. I wouldn't do high-level Qigong, because you're kind of at cross purposes with yourself, because high-level Qigong will be trying to do that at the same time. I mean, you can. I've known people who can, but, you know, I would do, the Hool breath is good. Like you said, the Hool breath is good. But you're going to be at cross purposes with yourself if you do that. Now, I believe, if I'm right, Susie Yoten's wife, you mentioned earlier that you believed, and if I'm wrong, please, you know, discard what I'm saying. But if I remember you from an earlier broadcast, you had said that you believed that at least one of your injuries was due to what I would call TMS, which is an emotionally driven, a very real physical problem, but its basis is in unresolved emotional issues. Now, if that is the case, then we eventually want you to be able to heal yourself so that you don't have to use medical marijuana or opiates. Having said that, I know that medical marijuana is absolutely totally helpful for a lot of things. I'm not a doctor. But if your issue is emotionally driven, we want to get you out of that. Out of, because again, that stuff, once you start on those things, as you know, you're kind of in a cycle, and it's pretty hard to get out of it, and so you have to kind of. So my suggestion is, if that's the case, you need to be working with me. I'm not going to tell you to drop everything cold turkey. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find out if in fact there's something I can do to help you, so that you can get your body to heal itself. And if not, I'll be the first one to tell you, listen, this is beyond my understanding. I'm not a doctor, you know, that kind of thing. So, having said that, to answer your question, the Hool breath is probably the safest one. The safest thing to do. The other safe thing to do is to do ritual. So again, with high-powered Kundalini mantras might be a little dangerous, because see, here's the thing. If in fact it is an emotionally, it's the result of an unresolved emotional issue, it means that you have an unconscious conflict that is raging within you. And the unconscious conflict is you're unable to suppress it anymore. You're living in an intolerable situation according to your unconscious mind. And you are unable to suppress it anymore, and it's now coming out in your body in some kind of pain or disease or some kind of mystery injury, right? And I could name off some diseases that this fits in. And so that's the real issue. So what happens is if you start doing high-level energy work or Kundalini mantras, then they're going to go in and start dismantling it. Your whole life is going to come apart. And so you may end up, and if you're trying to do because what medical marijuana does when it's not addressing an actual issue, if it's just like for pain management, then what it's doing is it's helping you to suppress that conflict. And I'm not judging that. Sometimes you have to do that. Trust me. I'm going through some crazy stuff in my life, and I'm this close to doing that. But I'm not at this stage. But sometimes the pain is so bad you have to. But when you're using something to suppress that conflict, and then you bring in a spiritual tool that is designed to bring that conflict to your conscious awareness, it can really cause hell for you. So that's why you need to work with me, because I am going to be able to help you identify what the conflict is, and then I'm going to help you devise a life plan so that you can extricate yourself from that conflict in a way that won't be so traumatic on your unconscious that it'll destroy you. Because my end goal is to get you healthy and to get you happy. So if that is the case, that's what's going on. Anyway, I've talked long enough about that. If that doesn't apply to you, please accept my deepest apologies and feel free to disregard everything I've just said. Okay? All right, so I'm looking for again, if you're new, I need to see a question. Otherwise, I can't help you. Dagger says, so the mantra you gave me for my astrology reading should do the trick. Yes. If you worked with me, so again, this is why I tell you you have to do it for X amount of days, because you have to treat it like a vow. You can listen. Let me be clear about this. You can use mantras haphazardly, just sort of when you feel like it. But the way to do it is to do it in a ritual setting and to do it for a specific period of time. The minimum is usually 40 days. Because it takes a minimum of 40 days of doing it every single day, just like an antibiotic, for the mantra to get in there and break up that unconscious pattern. And 40 days is the minimum because that's like the first level. Sometimes there are deeper levels that you have to go to, and so sometimes you have to go longer than 40 days, or you have to do multiple 40-day disciplines. Again, we're talking about deeply held issues. But to answer your question, yes, the mantra I gave you should do the trick. Okay, so it's physical. So if it's physical, then yeah, please disregard everything I said. If you've got a physical issue, then you need to be very safe with that. The whole breath should be good. Do ritual. Again, if you haven't worked with me, then you can work with me, and there are some all-purpose mantras. I gave one earlier. The mantra to Iduna is an all-purpose mantra. So even if you're doing things that are at cross purposes in terms of the chemicals, there are some all-purpose mantras that you can use that will not cause that kind of problem. So anyway, having said that, I don't see any more questions, so let me just give a final pitch, and then if there are any last-minute questions, I'll answer them. So the best way to support this channel, if you like what I'm doing, if you think what I'm doing is helpful, and if you think that this is something that the universe needs, then There are multiple ways to support this. One is you can just go on and support it, support.thunderwizard.com. You can do that. There's a better way to do it, which works better for everybody, which is go to thunderwizard.com and sign up as brain fart. Sign up and subscribe. I believe it's at the second level. The second level is $25 a month. For $25 a month, you get access to all of the advanced shamanism course. And you can go through it in your own time. But if you go all the way to the bottom and start from the beginning, I teach very specific Master Shamanism courses. And that $25 a month is something I can look at and I can go, yep, I can bank on that. And I know how much I have to work. Like right now, I don't have to work as much doing some of the phone work that I used to do. I have more time to do these videos. So that's one way. And of course, if you want to work with me on a personal level, if you want to be an apprentice, then you can go up to the higher levels and you can work with me anywhere from one time a month to 4 times a month. Those are the best ways not only to learn from me, to benefit from the videos on this free channel, but it also is a way that you can show your support for this work. And that's the best way to do it. The other ways, of course, are go to michaelwilliamdenny.com and see all of my books there. I don't make a ton of money off books, but when a lot of people buy a lot of books, then, of course, more money comes in for me. You can go to Amazon and just type in Michael William Denny and look at TV and video, and all of my DVDs and streaming, live streaming will come up. If you want live streaming of the Qigong that I talked about, the Celestial Qigong, go to qigong.thunderwizard.com, and then you can have live streaming as opposed to DVD. Some people want DVDs, some people want live streaming. 9 World Rune reading. For those of you who have had them with me, you know how powerful they are. This is one thing you can use with the ritual as well. What this does is when I do a 9 World Rune reading is I will look at all 9 levels of your being. So there are 9 levels, just like there are 9 worlds of the world tree. There are 9 levels within you. There is, anyway, I won't get into all of them, but when I look at all of them at once, I can tell exactly, pinpoint exactly where the conflicts and the problems are, and the runes will tell me what you need to do to fix them. So lots of times I'll look at a reading and you know, people externally will think they're doing okay, but I'll be able to see that at an unconscious level there's a real deep problem, and when I bring it to their attention they'll go, oh yeah. Sometimes they will be on the physical level, they will feel just totally screwed up, like they're coming apart at the seams, and then I can take a look and I can see, no, actually you're doing pretty good. What's happening is that there are these other things that are transforming and you're feeling it, and then I can help them understand so that at least they know what it is that their transformation is, and they can breathe a sigh of relief, and then they don't have to freak out so much, and it makes their transformation that much easier. So these are all the things that I provide for you, and by not only giving yourself these things, you are also allowing me to do my job. Eventually I want to get to the point where I've got 250 $25 subscribers. That way I can create a whole studio, I can do group things, I can do live Qigong demonstrations, I can do all kinds of stuff, and I can be on YouTube every day if necessary. That's where I want to get. Last thing, again, just to remind you, I am giving Vedic astrological readings a fall special, $90 off for I don't know how long, but for the immediate future, and then it'll go back up to the normal price of $198. So that's it for now. I'm gonna go ahead and shut things down unless there are any last minute questions. I don't see any questions here. No. Oh, here's one question. Dagara says, is it okay to mix the mantra with Qigong, or should you do them separately, or does it depend on the Qigong you're doing? Excellent question. If you are doing my Qigong and you have gotten a mantra from me, then yes, not only is it safe to do Qigong, but you should. You should do your Qigong first. So let's say you're doing the Thor's Hammer Qigong, and you've gotten a mantra and a ritual from me, then you should do the Thor's Hammer for, 10 minutes. Then immediately sit down, set up your ritual, do your mantra, and then close down and meditate. That is the most powerful combination there is. Now, if you've gotten your Qigong from somebody else or your mantra from somebody else, then I can't tell you, because this is important to know. When you get mantras and rituals from different people, they will be operating on a different vibration. It's not bad or good. This is what initiation is. When you get initiated into a lineage, you're getting initiated into a specific vibration. So when you mix traditions, a lot of people do this and they don't realize what they're doing. I did it. I know I've done it. You end up getting vibrations that if they don't align, then they create, you start coming apart. It can be very damaging. So if you got it from me, then absolutely you should mix them. Just make sure that you ground afterwards, that you put your hands over your navel and that you breathe and or do the whole breath to ground, and do the self-massage so that you ground yourself. That's the best. That is the nuclear option that will destroy any blocks in your life. It will take care of the North Korea in your unconscious mind. It'll blow them off the map. And you'll get rid of that problem. Okay. All right. So, I don't see anything here. Robert Sean here, I'm not sure what you're saying. You're saying I gave you $50, ignored. I don't know if you're saying I ignored you, but if you gave me $50, like went and gave me $50, and you wanted something from me, I take that as a gift. If you want a session from me, if you want some kind of service from me, then I've got multiple ways for you to get that. But listen, my deepest apologies. If you had an expectation that giving me $50 was going to get you something and you didn't tell me what it was that you wanted, I'm sorry that, if you got your feelings hurt, but, listen, I'm very busy. You got to tell me what you want. So if you want like 10 minutes of my time for $50 or something like that, then ask me ahead of time. That way I can work it out, and I may say yes or no or something like that. But yeah, gifts are just that. They're just gifts. But that's why I give so many services out. Because if somebody really wants something from me in exchange for that, that's what all those services are there for. So again, my apologies if that was misunderstood. But, hey, live and learn. All right, so let me see. Are there any other questions? I don't see any other questions. I think that I have said everything I'm going to say. Bottom line is this. This goes for everybody, anybody who's worked with me and people who haven't worked with me. The channel on the YouTube channel, the whole point of my YouTube channel is not just about listening to me blab on for hours and hours. As entertaining as that is, especially to me, I love hearing myself talk. As fabulous as I am at teaching, and I know that there is a value to that as well, the techniques that I give you are what this is all about. So I am not just one of those teachers that just all they do is talk. And listen, there are people out there that are addicted to that all they want to do is just go from one YouTube channel to another and listen to somebody talk. But talk is cheap. We live in a universe that demands interaction. And these techniques that I give you, whether they're free or whether they're ones that you pay for, these techniques have power. They have power to change your experience and change the universe at large. And it is my deepest desire that if you want to transform, I hope you take advantage of these. If you're new to my channel, please go on to the thunderwizard.com YouTube channel and binge watch my videos. Watch and re-watch them. I will probably answer all of your questions, but I can guarantee you there are techniques that I teach in those videos that other teachers that I've worked with would charge thousands of dollars for. And you get them for free. And I do that happily. I believe that's part of my job. Anyway, I think I'm done babbling for the moment, so I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go for the evening. So that's it, my friends. Remember that you do have this power. You have this power to completely transform those blocks in your unconscious mind that you consciously can't get rid of. And if you use that threefold step of life force energy, Kundalini power through mantra, and ritual, when you put all three of them together, I'm telling you that the universe is helpless against your intention. It has to manifest it, and you will transform. Having said that, my friends, thank you so much for the privilege and the honor of being part of your transformation and being a part of your life. And I will be talking to you very soon. Be thinking about me. I've got a lot of things that are good, positive things, and some very challenging things. Again, someday I'll talk about it. So I do need a lot of support. So in your spare time, throw me some positive vibes, because I really need it. And I do appreciate those of you who are. I really feel it. So that's it for me. Until next time, my friends, may the power of your intention be there for you to help you achieve your deepest desires and everything you want in life. Talk to you guys soon. See you later.